and welcome to the Retirement Benefits Law CLE training. My name is Simon Semaganda. I would like to thank you for joining us on this CLE training. It's virtual. For those that are joining us online, you are very welcome. Today's session is about speaking money. We are going to talk to you about retirement and how it concerns you, your client, and our profession. So to get us started, I would like to introduce and request Agnes Tibaeta Isharaza, the Corporation Secretary NSSF, to give us opening remarks on behalf of the ULS President, as well as the cluster head, Uganda Law Society, Labor and Retirement Benefits Law Cluster. Over to you, Agnes.
Good morning, members who have logged on. Thanks for joining us this rainy morning, and thanks for expressing interest in learning more about the retirement benefits sector. So before we start, I would like to request that we pray, and I'll request one of my colleagues here with me, Faith, to lead us in an opening prayer. Thank you.
Okay. Let's humble ourselves for prayer. Father in heaven, we are grateful for this wonderful day. We are grateful for this session. We pray that it's impactful. We pray that it changes our mindsets towards retirement and how we can save better. Father, guide our members, our fellow colleagues, our fellow advocates, Lord God Jesus, as they prepare for retirement, Father in heaven. May you provide where we need, Lord God Jesus, and may you guide us as we deliberate. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you, Faith. So members online, we have a program for today. Our colleagues from Law Society, in partnership with NSSF, are the organizers, and I've been privileged to open this session on behalf of Law President and the cluster head, Labor and Retirement Benefits, who I hope will join us later. So on behalf of the ULS, we thank you, our members, for always showing up and showing interest in these continuing legal education sessions. Today, it's the Retirement Benefits Law. And as I've mentioned, it's been organized by ULS in partnership with NSSF, and we will be joined also by UBRA, the regulator. We have a program which I believe has been circulated. If it hasn't, can we put it up so we know what the day will be like? Thank you. Yes, so we have 4 presentations. I will make the first presentation speaking about the legal framework on mandatory retirement benefit scheme, the need for compliance. I'll be sharing the experience from NSSF as a retirement benefits provider. It will be interactive, so please do send your questions as the presentations are being made to allow for a faster interaction at the end. We will then have a second presentation titled An Advocate, the Catalyst for Social Security Protection. It will be presented by Mrs. Joan Sewali, my colleague here at the fund. She's our manager, Regulatory Affairs. That will be followed by the law, a perspective from the practitioner. So our cluster head, Moses Segawa, will be expected to speak to this. And I also expect that the questions that you'll be raising are really from a practitioner's perspective. So we look forward to that interaction. And we shall wrap this up with a presentation from the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority, the regulator's perspective. And this will be presented by Mrs. Rita Nansa Siwaswa, the Director Legal Services and Secretary to the Board of UBRA, and we'll close. So ladies and gentlemen, that's our program for the morning. We look forward to a very interactive session. In the room with us are colleagues from NSSF who work with you very closely. You've already seen Faith. Faith is our manager enforcement and debt recovery, and we will have interactive sessions where I'll be calling in these colleagues to elaborate on some of the practical issues that they handle with you. And Mr. Semaganda, our lead moderator, who you have seen, and Edith, who you will see later. So thank you, colleagues, for making this possible. And thank you, our team on the machines, for relaying this transmission. And thank you to ULS for the overall leadership and guidance. I thank you. Back to you, Simon.
All right. Thank you very much, Agnes, for that very insightful opening remark. I want to speak to you members that our training today has been tailored for your benefit to ensure that you fully get yourself acclimatized with the law on retirement benefits in Uganda and how it relates to you. I want to say that today's session is going to be so helpful in terms of how we are supposed to approach the issue of retirement benefits in Uganda. So to transition into the presentations, in the opening remarks, Agnes has told us that she's going to present to us about the need for compliance, and she's going to give you the perspective of the retirement benefits provider, that is NSSF. We have been with some of you in many of the court cases we have been handling. We have met. We have been with many of you when you come here to claim for your 20%. Now we are going to look at the law, how it relates to you and your clients. Many of you have this issue of NSSF from the perspective that the law requires it, but we need to also appreciate it from the angle that it's for our benefit and it's for our good. Retirement, just like we started working some time back, a day is going to come when we shall stop working. So we need to plan for retirement. And how we plan for retirement, how we help our clients plan for retirement, is very, very key, because it's one thing to live a comfortable life today, but it's another to be comfortable after that job you are working at, after those clients you have had for so many years cease to be your clients and that job ceases to be yours. So we are going to transition into our first session, and that will be spearheaded by Agnes. So I'd like to tell you about Agnes. Agnes is the Corporation Secretary, NSSF. She's also the Chief Legal Officer, NSSF. She's a lawyer, a senior lawyer at that. She has been in practice for over 15 years, and she has held high-profile offices in this country. Currently, she's the Corporation Secretary of NSSF. She has been head legal at DFCU, and many of you have met her in different capacities, and she's on various boards in this country. She's on the board of Centenary Bank, and as well as other boards that she's sitting on. So to take us through this topic, we have a very relevant person, very skilled at that, and she knows what she's talking about. I'd like to introduce to you Agnes to take us through the first topic. Agnes,
Thank you so much, Simon. You made me feel very senior. Thank you. But I've actually made 20 years plus in practice. So, yes, amazing. I thank God for that. Can I have my presentation up, please? Great, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be speaking to you principally from the perspective of a retirement benefits provider, in this case, the NSSF. So, the topic is up there. I'd already spoken to it, so I'll get right on with it. This is not responding. Yeah. Is it on? Thank you. Still not working, sir. Am I pointing in the wrong direction? Good. Okay, so the contents of my presentation: brief introduction. We'll talk about Social Security in Uganda. We'll talk about NSSF specifically and our mandate. We'll have a look at the current national compliance status vis-a-vis the status in NSSF. We'll talk about the coverage, about the legal profession specifically as covered by NSSF, the challenges we are facing, some of the challenges, and some of the feedback, repeat feedback we keep getting from you, our stakeholders, and then we shall conclude. So, by way of introduction, and Simon kind of stole some of my lines from this slide, retirement is a fact. It will happen to us, each of us, either by choice or by fate, there will come a time when we are unable to work and will stop working. Like I said, whether by choice or fate. That's the context of retirement for purposes of this discussion. That at one point we will stop working and we'll cease working, and when that happens, you cease earning from your work. What then happens? And you'll notice we've given this a biblical twist. It's a fact established by God Himself. Numbers for Christians on the call, and I am sure even from the other religions. I'm not very familiar with the Quran and the other religious books, but I am very certain, because the religious principles generally are the same. But in our holy book, the Bible, Numbers 8:25, we are told that at 50, we are supposed to retire and work no longer. So that was then. Now, we are not supposed to dispute the Bible, but I know that these days, for example, here, we provided for 55 in the NSSF Act. So we are defying God's principles. However, we also know that in some other sectors, public service, retirement age has been set at 60. That said, we know we are living longer. The last statistics we saw show that the current age, what we call it, the age, expected age, life expectancy. Thank you. So for men now it's 62, for ladies it's 64. So we are even defying some of these principles. So in other words, if we go by the biblical number, which is in the Holy Book, so you retire at 50, obey God's word, and then if you're a gentleman, you have another 12 years to go. What happens between 50 and 62? If you're a lady, what happens between 50 and 64? But the point being that there will come a time when you're unable to work, and yet you will be living longer. So who has the responsibility to plan for that? We are appealing to each of us to think about how you retire. How you retire. So the whole purpose of retirement planning is that you should retire into a life that enables you to live reasonably comparable to the lifestyle you've been living at the time of retirement. I think the statistic is at least up to 75%. You should retire into a life that allows you to maintain a reasonable level of comfort as you have been used to. Now, in some instances, the obligation is placed on the government to plan for that, but we all know the reality. We all know the reality. So it starts with us. So briefly, that is the context that we are setting for this discussion. It starts with you. In Uganda, we have a number of retirement benefit schemes, and I know that when my colleague Rita comes later, she will expound on this. We have mainly for retirement benefit schemes. We have the Armed Forces Pension Scheme that was set up around the 1930s. To cater for the World War fighters at the time. It's been transformed over the years. It's now catering for our gallant men and women in the UPDF. We have the Public Service Pension Scheme set up for public servants, police, prison, teachers, nurses. We have the Parliamentary Pension Scheme for members of Parliament, and I think staff of Parliament. Yes, they benefit from that through a defined benefit. They get a gratuity, a life pension. There are other schemes operating in the market, operational benefit schemes. For example, MABS, Makerere University Retirement Benefit Scheme, set up, exempted from NSSF by the minister, supervised by UBRA. There are a couple of schemes in various places of employment. Many companies have set up schemes for their employees, which is very commendable. Again, I'm sure that my colleague Rita will speak to this, so I don't have to dwell on that. I will dwell on the NSSF. NSSF was set up by law in 1985, and under the NSSF Act, workers are required through their employers to remit a percentage of their salary every month, 5% deducted from the employee's salary, 10% contributed by the employer, to make a total of 15%. At the time the Act was set up, it was focused on employees in the private sector to mirror the public service pension scheme. And so on retirement, or when such a worker would be incapacitated, they would receive a lump sum from the fund. That is how the fund was set up. The Act of 1985 has since been amended, as you are aware. Last year, on 7th January 2022, His Excellency assented to our law, and so we now cite it as NSSF Act as amended. So it covers all employees in Uganda, as I'd already said, that are not covered by the other schemes that we've looked at. The other schemes that we saw on the slide before. It's a contributory scheme. As I've mentioned, there is a deduction from employees, a top-up by the employer, calculated on the total monthly wage. That is in as far as the mandatory contribution is concerned. So there are two categories, mandatory and voluntary. And we'll be expounding on those a little later. To date, the fund manages, the figure there is as at June, 18.5 trillion. Actually, to date, we've already crossed the 19 trillion mark of assets under management. These are the contributions from the members. And this money is invested in fixed income, equities, real estates within the East African region. We are limited to the East African region. So our mandate, like in the first bullet, is to receive the contributions from the eligible employees and their contributing employers. We invest the money and we pay back benefits to our members. That is our core mandate by law. We have a purpose. Our purpose as the fund is to make savings a way of life. We want our members to save as a way of life, not because you're compelled by law, but because you understand why you must save. That's our purpose. So over and above the statutory mandate, that is what drives each and every one of us at the fund. And that's why you've seen us spend a lot of time on financial literacy. It's not just about the law, ladies and gentlemen, but since you're lawyers, it's important that you, of course, appreciate the legal context. So as I mentioned, our law was amended last year, and a couple of changes were made. Some of the key changes arising from the amendment were that yes, any employee in our law is defined, from 16 to 55 is required to register as a member. And I know you'll be asking, so who is an employee? If you look at the definition section of our Act, it's an employee of an employer as defined in the Act. So I think it's K, section 1K. If we look at it, the breakdown is there. It's government, companies, partnerships as registered, if you're a trustee, if you're registered under any law, if you're a manager or a subcontractor, you're an employer. Any employee in those categories is required to register as a member. And most significantly, we didn't capture this here, we shall include it, is that every employer is required to register with us. That was a significant amendment in the law. Previously, there was a limit of 5 employees. An employer with 5 employees and above was the one required to register. In the amendment, the limit was removed. So if you're an employer as defined by Section 1K as amended, you are required to register as an employer. You're required to register your employees and make remittances or contributions to them as required by our law. That was a key amendment, the removal of the limit. Another key amendment was an introduction of voluntary contributions and registration of members for that purpose. So you recall I spoke about the distinction among the members. So we have the mandatory contributors. Those are the employees of employers as defined by the law. Those must mandatorily register and remit. However, there is a category of workers who are not captured by that definition. But you recall I said the purpose of saving is for us to plan for retirement. Retirement does not segregate between people working in formal employment and those not working in formal employment. In fact, the bulk of the workers in Uganda are in the informal sector. So it was realized that there was a gap that needed to be addressed. Hence the amendment, to now expand the mandate of NSSF from mandatory only to include voluntary. So there is now a provision for us to cater for members in the informal sector through voluntary contributions and registration. In the old law, we had a provision that required that we close a member's account at the age of 60. This was removed. In the new law, we don't have that requirement. So accounts are closed upon one either leaving the country, so they get the immigration grant, then the account would be closed, or if they access their benefits within the provisions. We'll talk about the benefits a little later. So if one accesses their benefits, the account will be closed at that point. Sometimes our members have some balances standing to their credit. In that instance, we'll hold any such credits for up to 7 years after the member has accessed their benefit, and if they don't get come back to get any balances outstanding, the balances would be then transferred to the reserve account, and any member can then apply for such monies through the minister. So that's how we've handled the issue of the age. I already talked about the requirement, the repeal of the previous requirement for a minimum of 5 employees. Now, provided you're an employer, as defined by the law, you're required to register even if you have 1 employee and remit. You are eligible and you're required to do so. In the amendments, the penalties for breach of the provisions were also revised. For a long while, since the law was enacted in 1985, we had a penalty of 10,000 shillings. And unfortunately, our defaulting employers were very happy to pay this sum, 10,000 penalty. Yeah, this has been cured in the current law. We have 500 currency points or imprisonment up to 1 year. In the old law, it was 10,000 or imprisonment up to 6 months. In the current law, 500 currency points. That comes to, I think, 10 million shillings. And or up to 1 year in prison. So the legislators felt it was necessary to address that area to make it deterrent, really. And the scope of benefits was widened. This is one of the key fundamental amendments in our law. I'll be taking you through the benefits as you know them, as we know them. However, in the new law, the board has been given the mandate to actually come up with new benefits. Many of you used to approach us and really make a case for yourselves as members, for your clients, as to why you really needed to access your money. And you know, our members tell us, this is my money, I need my money. It's a desperate situation. Unfortunately for us, because it's a statutory mandate we exercise, whatever we do can only be as provided for in the law. So this new provision actually enables us to respond to our members' needs. So as we speak, the board is actually in the process of considering a number of products. You're going to see some exciting announcements pretty soon about some of the products that we are coming up with. It's a great relief for us as well, and we are sure that our members will enjoy this as a result of this relaxation in the law. So I already spoke about our mandate, and the mandate really defines our business model, as you see on the screen. So we have our members. Mandatory members will contribute, as I said, 5% from the members' gross pay. Employer tops up by 10%. This is brought to the fund, and the law provides that the remittance should be done by the 15th of the next month. So when your money comes to the fund, it is invested. Currently, we have 3 board investment portfolios. We have the real estate category, we have equities, we have fixed income. That's the spread. Our largest investments are in fixed income, close to 80%. Equities, these are the listed companies you see, the stock exchange, here in Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania, up to 15% right now, maybe around 13%. And then real estate, the buildings you've seen around, Workers' House, Pension Towers near completion, you've seen Lobowa, and a couple of others. Those, the most visible, interesting, are at about 7%. They are the smaller bit of our investment portfolio. So when we invest in those, and we do have some investments in private equity, very small percentages, and we continue to explore investment opportunities, like I've said, that are safe and can guarantee a return for our members. Safety first. So from this, from real estate, we'll get income from sale of properties. And since we are talking about this, members, I encourage you to go visit Lubowa. There are very beautiful houses on sale there. Your lawyers, we are told lawyers have deep pockets. Go buy yourself a beautiful house in a very beautiful area. You may have seen the adverts. Take your clients, encourage your clients. When we buy these houses, you're contributing to the fund directly through the sale proceeds. We also rent some of the properties. Workers' House here is not fully occupied by the fund, as you may be aware. We rent, so we get rental income. We have Social Security House, fully rented. We get rental income from real estate, from the equities. We get dividends from our listed entities. So every time those companies perform well, we celebrate here because we know that a good dividend is coming in. Where necessary, we can sell the shares. But for now, we have not been doing that. Recently, you saw us invest in the Airtel during the IPO. So those are the equities. And so we look forward to the dividends whenever they are declared. And from the fixed income, we get interest from the bonds and all those government securities. We get interest. And so the combined pool of income, rent, house sale proceeds, interest, dividends is what makes our revenue. And so we get this revenue, we'll deduct the operating expenses. And as you may have heard us say in various fora, we are very proud to say that we are the most in terms of operational overheads. We run the fund at just approximately 1% of the revenue costs. Very, very efficient model. And then the other difference, which is the bulk of it, almost all of it, goes back to our members as interest paid every year. So there's that famous announcement made by the minister every end of September. That is where the money comes from. So the declaration is made and the cycle continues. We also pay our members. So when our voluntary members remit their contributions, it is the same model that we use. We will invest and then get revenue and then give them interest and other benefits. So that's our business model, ladies and gentlemen. I'll now speak to our benefits under the Act. So we have what we call the age benefits. When a member clocks 55, automatically you've qualified to access your savings, all your savings. And so a member may apply to get their benefits at that age, 55. We have another age-related benefit, we call it withdrawal, at the age of 50. If one has been unemployed for at least 1 year prior to making 50, they qualify for the withdrawal benefit. So you can come and apply to access all your savings with, of course, the evidence. Then we have the invalidity benefit. When unfortunately one gets incapacitated and is unable to work, this is subject to verification to determine the level of incapacity. Our law provides for permanent and temporary incapacity, so a member would be subjected to the required medical verifications to determine the level of incapacity. So in some instances, members may access portions of their savings based on the level of incapacity. Why? Because if one still has the opportunity to work, then you still want to ensure that they are saving for the future, for their retirement. Remember, that is the overall mandate of the fund, and that's the purpose of the law. So that explains why that is handled in that manner. We have immigration benefit, or we call it immigration grant sometimes. If a member relocates from Uganda to another country permanently, that's the catch. You're supposed to have left. Then you demonstrate that you're leaving and you're leaving for good, and you will access your benefits, your full benefits. In the old law, there was a provision, you had to wait up to 3-4 years before you could access the money. The amendment removed that requirement. When one leaves, they can get their money, irrespective of how long they've been serving. The other is the exempted employment benefit. Excuse me. You recall, you recall I mentioned the other pension schemes at the beginning of my presentation. If one is a member of such schemes, or any scheme exempted by the minister, for example, MABS was recently exempted, then they are not obliged to contribute to the fund. And the member is entitled to come claim their monies if they so wish. We always encourage our members to leave their savings with us as voluntary savers, or to at least transfer the savings to the other scheme and not to utilize the same. Remember, the objective is saving for the future. And lastly, the least attractive, but which is inevitable, the survivor's benefit. In the event our member loses their life, then the benefits will be paid to the next of kin. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the benefits under the law. Now, in the amendment that was recently passed, there was a provision made for access, what we call midterm access. If a member is 45 years and has been contributing with a fund for 10 years, and we've defined contributing to mean you have at least 120 contributions by count on your account, then you can access up to 20% of your savings. And I need to clarify, it's contributing because there was a misunderstanding or misinterpretation, whether it's contributions or savings. So the running interpretation is contributions. However, there are ongoing reviews in Parliament to determine whether to amend that provision to make it savings, so that the issue is whether one has saved for 10 years. That is in Parliament under consideration. For now, it's still contributions. The other aspect to midterm is to do with disabilities. Our disabled members can now access up to 50% of their savings at the age of 40. So for now, these are the benefits we are running with. As I mentioned earlier, we are coming out with new products which will have new benefits under the voluntary arrangement. Those will be communicated in due course. How am I doing on time? So I determine how to pace myself. Someone needs to alert me. Otherwise, I could go on forever. Yes, there's a lot of information to share with the members. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now give you just a high-level brief on the statistics in as far as the numbers to do with employees and how we compare with this as a fund are concerned. So, these numbers are derived from our internal research that was recently done. We realized there are varying numbers in the market, so we conducted the research recently, and this is what we have. As of, no, it can't be November. I think there's a mistake there. November 2023? It should be 2020. We'll correct the year. But so 20.5 million employees. The Uganda total labor force, excuse me, of these, NSSF, remember we are supposed to register, we have the mandatory category and then also voluntary savers. So we have only 2.3 million out of these. Out of 20.5 million workers, we have 2.3. That's about 11.6%. When Rita comes later, she will share with you the numbers, including the other providers. But she will show you and you will see that, in fact, we are the largest, we have the largest coverage. Those are the numbers. Employers, have some water. Yeah. Excuse me. So we have about 93,000 registered employers as a fund. We have about 93,000 registered employers. Of this, just about 36,000 are contributing. Contributing meaning they are making remittances for their employees. What is happening to the other close to 50-something thousand? What is happening to the employees in those entities? That is a question and area of concern for us. So just about 38% of our registered employers are making remittances for our members. Now, we mentioned earlier we have about 2.3, close to 2.4 million registered members. So if you look at our records, that's the total number of employees. The sad bit of it is that just about 760,000 of those are actually contributing. Just about 760,000. The other 1.6 make either irregular contributions or actually dormant. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the numbers we are running with. That is why compliance is a very, very big area of concern for us, and it is our mandate. So let's bring it back home to us in the legal profession. We got these numbers from the ULS. Thank you for sharing that report with us, ULS, because we wanted to have a comparison of how our profession is doing. We have 1,200, call it 30 law firms registered, approved by the Law Council. And I was very excited to note that of these, about 1,130 have registered as contributing employers, which is close to 92%. So we thank you very much, our colleagues, for complying with this. We know that the NSSF certificate is a requirement for registration, and we are glad that you have actually heeded the call. It's a statutory requirement. So thank you so much. We will be looking at engaging the 8% to assist them in this process. We know there are some issues that have been raised, which we are engaging with the members on a case-by-case basis to see how we can assist. Our membership including ourselves, we are members of ULS. As at 22nd November, we were told we are about 4,000, close to 4,600, the number to be precise, 4,598. Now, of this, as a fund, we have only 1,658. The statistic changes here. So where we have close to 92% law firms registered, we have just about 36% of the membership as individual members, employees. There is a challenge here. There is a challenge. But that is how we are performing as a sector. What are some of the challenges we are seeing, which probably leading to some of the numbers as you've seen them? So we've observed, and this is not just about the legal profession, I'm speaking to the wider membership. We note that our members, some of our members will go out of their way to avoid being caught, if I may use that, by the provisions of the law. So we've seen an emergence of independent contractor relationships, which are intended to circumvent the provisions on making employee contributions. Now, this was always a problem, and there was the amendment in the law that I spoke to earlier about a manager or a subcontractor being an employer as recognized by the law was meant to address that, because that is how many of our potential employees were actually not being covered, and it was really very sad to witness. I'll give an example in the road sector. So UNRA will contract a service provider. The service provider will get, for example, on the roads, you'll see these young men and women, you know, they are the bulk of the service provider on that project. Now, those will be covered under the fact that the service provider is an independent contractor, and therefore anyone under them is literally let off the hook, in quotes, and the poor employees go without social security contributions. But like we've noted, Section 1, CARES amended, such contractors are now recognized as employers, and they're required to register as employers and register their employees. In fact, we have gone on a deliberate, intense sensitization session with some of these players. We've run sessions with UNRAW. We've run sessions with a couple of other large sector players in the oil and gas sector, in the communication sector, purposely to address this issue. So we expect that this will change. The common ones, under declaration of employees' wages, numbers of employees being undeclared, and non-contribution. We've seen employees being classified as casual laborers. We don't give employees contracts. This is also true in our law firms, you know. And so because they don't have contracts, they are casual laborers, they don't have to be regarded as employees. We've seen delays in making contributions, misappropriation of contributions. And the saddest bit is, for me, that 5% that you get off an employee's salary, you know. An employer deducts the 5% of an employee's salary and misappropriates it. That's terrible. It's criminal, as you'll see later. I'm sure Joanne will speak to that. And the other fraudulent practices and claims for claims based on invalidity, for example. Remember, we talked about invalidity. There's a determination of temporary or permanent capacity. The fact whether one is actually invalid. There's an interesting case that we've handled fairly recently that I would like to ask Simon to share with you very briefly, just to demonstrate this challenge. Yeah, Simon, thank you.
All right, thank you, CS. I want to speak about the case of Musa Sizi, and I will speak to the facts that are currently in court. We received a claim in NSSF about an invalidity benefit. But before that, we had received the same person claiming for accepted employment. And when they realized they don't qualify, they came for invalidity. What is surprising about this situation is that all the documents that are relating to this case seem to be made up, to say the least. And also it appears that the person from the get-go has just decided to come up with the documents with the support of the system and to ensure that they get claimed, they get paid. Now we have so many of such claims aside from that, where we have people ideally who would not qualify, they are fine and okay, come up with claims that they are sick, they have mental health issues, and it comes back to us as lawyers, because in many of these cases we are also involved. We help these people actually go and apply to court to get the court orders. Now when we do our verifications as required by the NSSF Act, we find out that many of these claimants actually are not sick as claimed, which paints a very challenging picture, because the people who are actually sick and need help do not get the justice they deserve, because the people who have decided to make the waters muddy by coming up with claims that that are not justified have presented those challenges. So without getting into the legalities of the case is simply about a person who ideally is not in the position they claim to be, and they are presenting the claim. What is surprising about the case is that the person who is said to be mentally unwell is the same person actually suing and deponing affidavits, so which creates a lot of doubt in such cases. Yes.
Thank you, Simon. So we've had a number of my presentation, please. Such cases. So you find my manager legal here goes and registers in one of our districts up north as a cleaner, and you get the application and you're thinking, I know Faith, she was manager NSSF, how did she end up a cleaner in Chikube? It's crazy. In fact, you may have seen, you all know we're under investigation, it's a fact, we saw it happen. One of the findings of the IGG, if you noticed, where she recommended prosecution was for that category of members, because it was astounding. Yes, so that is the one category where the IGG also found that it was just crazy. So yes, and our members tell us, but it's our money. Yes, it's our money, but for a purpose as has been defined in law. And our role is to ensure that we progress the remittances and benefits processing accordingly. So I'm aware that our time has run out. This is some of the feedback we got from our members. So members wonder why we opt for criminal prosecution of employers that fail to remit, social security contributions. True, the law provides for both civil and criminal prosecution. We opt for criminal prosecution. So Faith, I would like you to look at these questions because you're going to answer them. And I would like Faith specifically because Faith is our manager, debt and enforcement unit. And this is the team that actually is at the front line of ensuring compliance when this happens. So when I look at this feedback, Faith, I think you speak to it. I suspect we are preempting some of the questions that would have come through, so we are hitting two birds with one stone. I'll supplement where necessary. Please go on.
Thank you so much, CS, for that elaborate presentation. And I'll start with the first one, that is, why are we opting for criminal prosecution of employers? Criminal prosecutions are actually provided for under our Act, and we chose that mode because it is faster for both the employer and the fund. When we go into civil litigation, it drags on for years and years, and yet on our end, the monies keep on increasing. Your penalty will go up every month, interest will be declared every year, and yet the employer will fail to pay. So we managed to balance the boat between both the employer and the employee, because you don't want to have an employer who is going to close business because of failure to pay NSSF. So we choose criminal prosecutions because they're faster and they're also provided for by the law. And to avoid extreme effects of shutting down the businesses, because the businesses need to thrive to be able to provide employment.
Please carry on.
And then the
Yes.
second statutory penalty levied on employers is quite excessive and can put the employer out of business. The penalty is actually, on our end, we seem to think it's not too high because one, you have deducted money for these employees and you've not remitted it. Like CS mentioned, even the 5% that you have deducted from this employee, and not only for 1 month, you keep on, like an employer keeps on doing that every month for a whole year. For, there are certain matters with us where people have not remitted for over 8 years. Over 8 years. The essence of this penalty is to ensure that you don't actually fall short of doing your obligations. You adhere to the law. We feel it is subtle on our end because we believe if it could even be higher, it could enable us to drive compliance. Because when you look at the penalty, the 10% every month levied, it's actually short of what the other person, the employee, would be losing out at the end when they retire and their money is not there. If you are that employee and you come in and your money is not there at all, we've had such cases, like CS has mentioned, people walk in and say, but my money was not paid and the fund has been in existence. What have you been doing? So that effect that you've caused on another is actually more grave than this penalty that we actually levy. So we try as the institution to ensure that employers deter and fulfill their obligations rather than not fulfilling them.
And maybe just for clarity, I think this is very, very important for you, our members, to understand. So there are 3 categories. So in the event that you've defaulted, what is the expectation? So there is the initial payment that you should have remitted in the first place. That's the principal. Then there is the interest that the member would have derived from that principal if it had come to the fund and been invested. And then there is the penalty. So there are 3, it's 3-pronged. When we are collecting, principal and interest are not negotiable, just for our members to understand. The 15%, if it's mandatory, that should have come, is supposed to come. And the interest the member should have received on that investment, calculated from the time when the investment should have been made. Interest is declared every year, as I mentioned. So that interest will be calculated on the principal for the years the member has not accessed their monies. That principal plus the principal and the interest are not negotiable, ladies and gentlemen. Then there is the penalty, the statutory penalty. The law provides for 10% on any sum outstanding per month. It can get crazy, ladies and gentlemen. That statutory penalty, compounded 10% on the amount standing every month. That is subject to some discussion. So when you talk about put an employer out of business, yes, it is understood. Where there is justification, the law has given the MD a discretion to waive a percentage where there is justification. So just for your information and to note, but the principal and interest are not negotiable. So that needed to be clarified, yeah? So Faith, you're the one who handles negotiations with employers. That's for you as well.
Yes. Okay. The next one. The fund should allow employers to negotiate for longer repayment periods. Longer repayment periods are usually problematic. They both on the fund and also on the employer. Imagine you have 3 years and yet you're still in default because that 10% will continue, it will not freeze. you will still have to pay the 10% penalty of unpaid contributions for that period, the 3 years. And then each year you'll have to pay the interest as well. It would not be fair on the employer. For them, I think for us on our end, the employers think that we tend to ignore their sentiments, and yet the fund has their sentiments at heart. You would not want to have that payment period, and every time the fund sends every year, there is this new amount that you should pay on top of the other one that you have. I think it would really be unfair. So the fund negotiates shorter payment periods so that the employer is factored in, and also to ensure that there is an end to this process. You cannot be defaulting for all that time. It is quite unfair also on the employee, because remember, employees are always asking the fund, where is my money? So for you to sit down and tell an employee that, look here, they're going to pay the money in 5 years, you need to factor in, some of them are old, they're about to get their age benefit. Will you cater for them if you have such a longer payment period? So we sit down with the employers, discuss, and also reach an amicable settlement. We don't want to be unfair on both ends.
Good, thank you, Faith. Yeah, so to the extent possible, settlements will be through a mutual understanding, mindful of the fact of the obligation and the pressures on the employer, but always keeping the member at the center of the discussion. In fact, in some cases, these are employees who may have long left your place of employ and are struggling. We've seen members here, an old man comes shedding tears, their kids are not in school, and then they expect you to do something. So each case will be unique and would be appealing to the employer to be mindful of their employee. They were their employee. They gave you their best, really. So at that point, a bit of empathy is required. But yes, there will be challenges sometimes that are understandable to do with the business, because at the end of the day, we as the fund need the employer to keep in business, so you can keep your employees on board and keep remitting for them. So it can be very difficult for sure, and so we always endeavor to try and have a kind of win-win for both employer and employee. That is our intention. And so yes, we'll always be open to negotiation. The last one, members, why is it easy to contribute but hard to access? It is not hard to access your monies. The age benefit specifically is the easiest. 55, 50, midterm 45, and the one for people with disabilities. If your credentials in the fund are accurate, they are very easy. You can apply online, you can come to the branch and apply, you can monitor your claim, and you'll be able to get your payment within a reasonable time. Our average turnaround time for those right now is hovering between 7 and 9 days. And we have testimony to this effect. We have members who have gotten their monies in a few days. There will be outliers. Those we accept. And where that happens to you, please engage and you will be assisted. There are some complicated ones. The survivors benefit specifically. I think you saw the headline about a week or so ago, where our MD was talking about now the need for the fund to actually visit graves, because true to some of our members' nature, yes, driven by whatever situations, some of our members are even faking their deaths, Now, yes, it's your money, but there is that obligation. And for us, put yourselves in our position, we have a mandate to implement. So we've seen very interesting scenarios. We've seen cases where a widow comes and declares their husband dead, In a few cases, they may even manage to beat the system, and I'll be honest, in this case, beat the system. And then a few months later, the husband shows up. Our member showed up and had no idea what had gone on. So if you are in our position, what would you do? To ensure protection for all? So in the survivors benefit specifically, yes, it is taking a little longer, but we hope you understand why. But we work together with the families to try and expedite the process to the best of our ability. For the age benefit members, there should be no problem. If there's a challenge, you engage us and we will assist as we must, as we are mandated to. And so it's a fact. Think a member clocks 60, their account is closed. That provision was actually removed in the amendments. So what the amended law provides for is that an account will be closed when a member accesses their benefit within the provisions of the benefits I've talked about, say age benefit or survivors, all those categories. So when you access your benefits, because remember it's a lump sum, so you get your whole amount. Ideally, that's when an account would have been closed, or when a member leaves the country, immigration grant. However, the account, if there's any credit standing to the account, it will remain on the account up to 7 years after you have accessed your benefit. So we don't talk about closing the account. We say if there's any credit, not we, the law. The law provides that if there's any credit standing to your account after you have accessed your lump sum, it will remain for up to 7 years thereafter and then be transferred to the reserve account. And even then, a member would then have a right to claim for the same, only that it will be more complicated. You'd have to go through the minister. So we don't really close in that sense. I hope it's clearer, and you can look up the provision in the amended law. Yes, and you've seen our contacts. You can engage further for further clarification.
We have two more, then we can close it. I think one is a comment. Yeah, then the other one is the only option for registration is with a national ID, but many employees, especially the young ones, do not have national IDs. What other documents can be used to register employees?
I think that will be answered by Joanne in her presentation, our compliance manager. So just take note of that. You want to answer it now? Okay, fine. Joanne will take that on. Joanne is our manager, regulatory compliance.
Good morning, members. Just in response to Council's question, a national ID is actually a prerequisite provided for under the Registration of Persons Act that empowers DINIRA to be the only prescribed regulator and issuer of national IDs. So in Uganda today, a national ID is a prerequisite for recognizing and ensuring the registration of persons, and that is why we are implementing a law that has already been put in place. So that is the purpose of it, right? And national ID is one of the prerequisites for that.
Good, thank you. Okay, so Simon, I've come to the end of my presentation and I know I've overshot a bit. So back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, CS, for that very insightful presentation. Actually, I've been receiving comments from members appreciating and thanking you for the presentation. Members, this presentation is going to be shared with ULS and it will be circulated with you through your various emails. Now we want to also now transition into our second presentation, which is very, very critical. The second presentation is about an advocate, the catalyst for social security protection. It's going to talk to us about our role. We are not just also part of the NSSF as members, but we are also in our capacity as advocates handling issues that are very critical and require our knowledge of the law in advising our clients. How are we in position to help our clients be able to comply with the law? We are not only supposed to be there to defend them when they're in conflict with the law, but we are also supposed to help them be compliant. So to take us through this session on the role of the advocate and how they can be a catalyst for social security protection in Uganda, please welcome Joanne Sewali. She's our manager, regulatory compliance. Now, Joanne Sewali Baganda Nswa, is a lawyer, advocate, and certified chartered secretary with over 8 years experience. She has experience in corporate governance and finance. She has advised and overseen several high-level projects and operations throughout her career. She's currently the manager of regulatory compliance at the NSSF. Please welcome Joanne.
Good morning, Council. I take this opportunity and pleasure to addressing you over a very pertinent topic in regards to embracing social security and embracing the law that governs social security and social protection in Uganda. I look forward to the engagement with you in regards to this particular topic, so feel free to share your comments as and when the need arises. So I'll just get quick into the presentation. So the key pointers and the key aspects that I'll be covering will be social protection as a human right, its definition, evolution, and purpose, the national social protection policy and pillars of social protection in Uganda, the national social security system of Uganda, the regulatory framework that supports the social security framework in Uganda, and advocates. I'll conclude by mentioning how advocates are catalysts for social security reform and protection in this country. So, I'll get right into it. What is social protection? Social protection is a very broad topic that actually involves both the public and the private interventions to address any risks that arise from vulnerabilities following income insecurity, social deprivation, and also leading to undignified lives by the different members within our society. Under that objective of the Constitution, it obliges the state to ensure that all rights and opportunities are given to Ugandans to access education, health services, clean and safe water, work, decent shelter, adequate clothing, food security, pension, and retirement benefits. So it is the role of the government of Uganda to ensure that these services are provided, and that is why they fall under the umbrella of social protection. And the fact that it's enshrined within our constitution, it is an inalienable human right that we must all address. The evolution of social protection is in twofold. There is a traditional aspect of it as well as the modern aspect and how it is governed today. Traditionally, social protection was more about the community. It was the community's role and it was community-based through the family system, the clan system, mutual assistance schemes, and neighborhood support groups. But today, that has changed. There is actually formal social protection that has been put and prescribed in our laws that we have today. Some examples of schemes that have come up through the enforcement of law include the Public Service Pension Scheme, the Parliamentarians Pension Scheme, and the National Social Security Fund, to mention just a few. So that has been the evolution of social protection in Uganda. What is then the purpose? The purpose of social protection is to guarantee that workers have a decent life upon retirement, to minimize any income shocks that are associated with ill health and unemployment. You're all aware that nobody knew that COVID would come. Nobody knew that COVID would disrupt the economy, would put the whole world on a standstill. There were loss of jobs that arose from that, loss of lives. So social protection is actually an umbrella that puts in place a mechanism that can prevent a very huge shockwave from that. It also builds a cohesive society by reinforcing a state-citizen contract. That is a social contract that is between citizens and the government, and it contributes also to political stability. Because if there is no way to cater for the elderly or the vulnerable groups in society, that would mean that there would be an increase in the crime rate, an increase in, all these social injustices that happen. So
the provision of social protection is actually a catalyst for and an indicator of a country's middle income status. As you will see in some economies like Singapore that prioritize social protection and social security. So what then is the National Social Protection Policy Framework about? What does that look like in the context of Uganda? So in this context, there are two things that we are going to explore. The first is the Ugandan Vision 2040, as well as the National Development Plan, that is the NDP. I'm sure many of you have familiarized yourself with it. But in respect to social protection, these policies have actually been put in place so that the government of Uganda can prioritize social protection. What that means, for example, under the Uganda Vision 2040, is that it underscores the importance of social protection to address some of the risks that I had mentioned earlier and to provide assistance to the vulnerable groups within our society by virtue of their class, by virtue of their age, gender, disaster that could arise, and also the disabilities that could arise as well. And it is envisioned that social protection is a system. The end goal is to ensure that there is a universal pension for all Ugandans that is futuristic and for everybody to benefit from. Under the National Development Plan, that is the NDP, it highlights social protection as one of the key strategies for transforming Uganda from a peasant society to a modern and prosperous country. So social protection is actually very, very critical, and policies have been put in place to ensure that the government and the citizens of the country actually benefit from this. What then are the pillars of social protection in this country? There are two pillars for social protection. First is social security, and the second is social care and support services. Under social security, it is more of the protective and preventive interventions to mitigate factors that could shock one's income. These factors include unemployment, they include ill health, they include age, they include age. Yes, I'll stop from there. But how social protection falls in one as a key pillar for social protection is that it includes direct income support. This is non-contributory, whereby the government is financing or supporting some of these services, as well as social insurance that is contributory and funded. Under social care and support services, this is care and support that is given to protect and empower vulnerable individuals who are unaware or unable to fully take care of themselves. However, it should be noted, before I leave this slide, it should be noted that social protection is the core responsibility of the government. It is the government, through collaboration with private and other stakeholders, that can ensure that we all benefit from this social protection umbrella. The National Social Security System in Uganda, I'll first and foremost define what social security is. Social security is a protection provided to individuals and households to ensure access to health and to guarantee income security, particularly in cases of old age, unemployment, sickness, invalidity, work injury, maternity, or death. The components, like I had mentioned earlier, they include the direct income support. Usually that is part of the larger social protection program, comprising of regular and predictable support, majorly to vulnerable groups and as well as senior citizens within the society, so to provide some relief to them during that period of old age, as well as social insurance, which is mainly contributory, and it mitigates the livelihood risks and shocks such as retirement, loss of employment, work-related disability, and ill health. So that is what the National Social Security ambit looks like. And like I mentioned earlier, it is government's responsibility to guarantee this social security so that it can promote equity, it can directly reduce poverty, support accessibility of excluded Ugandans to social security services, provide a foundation that builds productive livelihoods to enable a life of security and dignity. The regulatory framework of social security in Uganda is founded first and foremost on international instruments that the government has ratified. The first is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948 that provides for the right to social security in the event of those key incidents that may arise that are usually beyond one's control. There are other international and regional instruments that apply, and these include, on the international level, the International Covenant on economic, social, and cultural rights that was enacted in 1966, the Social Security Minimum Standards Convention of 1952, the Equality of Treatment Social Security Convention of 1962, and the Invalidity, Old Age and Survivors Benefits Convention of 1967. This is just a short list. There is really an array of international instruments that have been put in place to guide governments and practitioners on how to create policies and what governing policies or what governing principles should be applied in preparing of the different policies and laws applicable. On the regional level, there is the East African Common Markets Protocol that pertains to the free movement of labor between partner states. But what is key to note is that there are discussions that are ongoing to see whether actually there can also be a free movement of social security. For example, if I'm employed in Kenya and I have NSSF in Uganda, can I be able to transfer my benefits from NSSF Uganda to NSSF Kenya, where I'm currently working? So those are some of the things that are actually being discussed right now, plus other conventions that are being brought on board to strengthen the existing social protection schemes that are available, and also to increase accessibility. How does the structure look like in Uganda? So I've divided this structure in 5 different ambits, and what is key to note are 3 things: contributory, non-contributory, and defined retired benefit schemes. So I will take you through this slide. Under the Public Service Pension Scheme, you have the non-contributory defined retirement benefit scheme. This is non-contributory because there is no contribution that is made by the employee or the employer, but actually it is financed through the consolidated fund, and the benefits are given in a lump sum and through annuities, and which one is entitled to upon retirement. This scheme majorly targets the civil servants. Civil servants include anyone who works in government, majority of the people who work in government, and for example, the nurses, the doctors, the teachers, and other civil servants that are employed under public service. Then you have the Parliamentarian Pension Scheme that is actually established by an Act of Parliament. And under this scheme, it is first and foremost a contributory scheme whereby the members contribute 15% from their emoluments and 30% is contributed by the government of Uganda. And it's also received upon retirement or upon one not being a member of parliament anymore. It targets the members of staff and all parliamentarians, and it can be received in a lump sum. Then you have the Armed Forces Pension Scheme, also established by an Act of Parliament, non-contributory. It is clearly defined, financed by the Consolidated Fund, and targets military officers. Then you have the National Social Security Fund, that is contributory in nature, defined. It's a provident fund. It's financed by contributions from both the employer and employees, for the employer contributing 10%, the employee contributing 5%, payable in a lump sum after certain events can arise, as the CS had actually mentioned earlier, and it targets both employees in the formal and informal sectors. Then lastly, you have the voluntary retirement benefit schemes, and these are schemes that are non-statutory in nature, and they are managed by employers on behalf of employees or other public institutions, and they vary in nature and they are majorly contributory as well. Okay. However, there are certain strategies that have been put in place to enhance Social Security coverage, scope, and access. This can be seen through inclusivity and expansion in terms of coverage and scope, whereby you have contributions expanding coverage, for example, through the National Social Security Amendment Act that expanded coverage to also cover employees that are in the informal sector. There are legal reforms that have been put in place to provide for contributory Social Security for non-contributory schemes, and also establishment of direct income support schemes for vulnerable groups as well. Other strategies that have been put in place include enhancement of access through health insurance services and compensation by workers in both the private and the public sectors, as well as the establishment of the regulator, that is UBRA, to supervise and develop the management of the pension sector in Uganda, which I believe is very key in order to regulate. It is good that these schemes have been put in place, but there is need for regulation of these schemes and the sector at large. However, there is still need to extend Social Security, and it has been done before. These are some of the examples that have been put in place for some countries that have actually made it. For example, in the Republic of Korea, whereby they increased health insurance coverage from 20% in 1977 to full coverage by 1989. In Tunisia, here in Africa, it increased health and pension coverage from 60% in 1989 to 84% in 1999. In South Africa, their pension reaches 85%, covering 1.9 million beneficiaries of the eligible population, and thereby reducing the poverty gap by 94%. Just a minute. Sorry about that. The presentation seems to have been cut off, but in conclusion, I would like to mention that advocates act as a catalyst for Social Security change and protection. They do that in threefold. The first is through advisory services. How do they do that? On social protection policy that has been put in place, implementation and enforcement, as well as compliance with the law. Advocates play a very, very critical role in regards to that. It is our responsibility as advocates and also our duty to ensure that we provide advisory services, sound advice in accordance with the laws that have been put in place and the international instruments that have also been put in place. Secondly, it is the role of an advocate to drive the implementation of Social Security policies, programs, and the laws that have been put in place. Without you, there is no enforcement. You are our key partners and you are key people that we're supposed to go to ensure the implementation of the laws that have been put in place. And finally, advocacy. advocacy through legal education and legal representation in the courts of law, thereby helping people, especially the vulnerable, to navigate the legal and bureaucratic systems that have been put in place. And this is a key role for our advocates that we have today. Thank you. Sanity has been restored. So, what are our key takeaways today? The first is social protection is important for the support and maintenance of the minimum acceptable level of consumption and living of dignified lives. Secondly, every Ugandan, whether employed or not, needs a guarantee of social protection across their life cycle. Thirdly, social protection strengthens the capacity of vulnerable groups and their families to meet the basic needs, build resilience, access opportunities, and improve their lives. So I have come to the end of my presentation. I don't know whether there are any questions. Yeah, I'm happy to take on any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne, for illuminating our understanding of the critical role of social protection in our society. I don't know about you, but I'm now more than ever encouraged to increase my social security savings. So just some housekeeping. If you have any question, you can kindly post it in the chat and we shall take it. We'll take them as they come. So I have a question here. I'm not satisfied with the response on the registration documents. Is NSSF position that employers should not employ people without national IDs? URA has an alternative for people with not national IDs. What is NSSF's alternative?
All right. Thank you so much for that question. I think I'm the right person to respond because I'm the one who answered it on the first round. Like I said, NSSF is implementing what the law has put in place, and this is a decision that was taken. It is not in any way telling you or restricting you on how to employ or what documents to use as an employer when you are employing somebody, but in ensuring that we are compliant with the Registration of Persons Act. It's pertinent that we have these national IDs that have been put in place. Your role as an employer is to encourage those different people who do not have national IDs to go and seek and get the national IDs. We have partnered as well with NIRA to ensure the smooth transition or support in case the need arises in order to get these national IDs. Yes, that is our position.
Thank you so much, Joanne. To the person who asked the question. Yes, please.
Edith, Agnes here. I would like to supplement for the benefit of the member. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So, for the benefit of our member who requires further clarity, the legal position is as has been stated by my colleague Joanne. That's what it is. Yes? And of course, we need to comply, as you can imagine. However, mindful of the constraint that you are literally reiterating by insisting on asking that question, and the challenge you've kind of put to us that URA does have an alternative, true. So we are mindful of our members' constraints in this sense. So what we've done, where there are demonstrated constraints to access an ID, we have put in place a mechanism that can enable employees to register. However, I would advise that you engage our branches to guide you on the modalities, but it is critical to note that the compromise, this is an administrative compromise or arrangement, but it is understood by our members that they will not access their benefits in the event of that eventuality unless they have the ID. So we need to demonstrate compliance. So at the point of registration, there's that administrative arrangement that has been made. So yes, you can register with alternative documents as you will be guided by our branch colleagues. However, like Joanne has rightly stated, please encourage the member to still pursue the ID because they will need it anyway at the time of claiming for their benefit. And we are aware that the reason many members don't have IDs is because there were some constraints, in NERA. But we are also partnered with NERA, without repeating what Joanne has said, so we can all work together to facilitate the process. So I hope this finally resolves the concern that there is an administrative avenue for registration. Please engage our branches, and you have our contacts. We can engage further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CS. CS talked about our contacts. Just to add, we have a toll-free line that is open Monday to Saturday. You can maybe write it down. It's 0800-286-773. Where you get answers to all your inquiries. We also have an email address, which is customerservice@nsfug.org. Feel free to use those platforms for any inquiries. So as we wait for our next speaker, I still encourage that if you have any questions, kindly post them in the chat and we'll be able to take them. So maybe just Joanne, maybe to shed more light. Some lawyers maybe think that when they reach the age of accessing their benefits, they might not be able to actually access them. So there's that perception that is around. So Joanne, being our manager here, can just assure council online that actually when you reach the age of retirement, you can actually get your benefits.
Maybe not to overlap, but the CS had actually highlighted this before. One, it is important to note that there is no restriction. If a member qualifies, the member qualifies and we shall give them their money. But it's in regards to how or at the point in time when the benefit arises. If it's an invalidity benefit, it has to be investigated. And once we have investigated and certified through our medical practitioners, then we can be able to give you the benefit that arises from that. Then all the other benefits as well in regards to age, we'll just need to verify the documentation that you have submitted. You are encouraged to put in your claim. If it's midterm access, you are encouraged to put in your claim as and when you desire, and the money shall be accessible and given to you. And we have even made it flexible that if you want, we can put it on mobile money or on other electronic platforms that you desire. Of course, those that are regulated and are known, not like cryptocurrency, but for example, through mobile money, it can be through a bank account. So that is what is acceptable, and that is where we shall pay the money to. And just make sure that all your documents are in order so that there is no delay or back and forth, so that we are able to support you fully. And even as a member, some may, pass on. And for the beneficiaries and that's following the survivor's beneficiary, yes, even that is possible. We're able to do the verifications. We have partnered with different government agencies, just like the Administrator General. We have partnered with URSB. We have partnered with NERA in order for us to do those verifications and make sure that the process is seamless. What causes the delays is usually when there are disputes among different family members, or disputes in regards to when there is no will. So I also encourage members to encourage customers or clients to get into the habit of writing wills, ensuring that the wills that they have are actually valid and can be used and not challenged, so that it also doesn't frustrate or delay the process that has been put in place. But us as an entity that has been put in place, a statutory corporation that is established by an act of parliament, we shall do our duty. We shall enforce the provisions of the act to the latter and also support you as our members, as one of our values is customer centricity. We welcome feedback, like Edith and Agnes had shared earlier. We accept feedback and we welcome it very well so that we can actually improve our services to you. Thank you.
We'll say Joanne, free benefits law advice there. I couldn't have put it better. We just have some comments I'll run through. Good morning, enlightening discussion. Thank you. Thank you so much for participating. So I also see comment here that the material was not illegible. I think we can find a way of sharing our presentations with you so that you can internalize them further. As we wait for our next speaker, just to retaliate, if you have any question, kindly post it in the chat and we shall be able to address it. Okay. Okay. So maybe as we wait for our next speaker, Joanne, I don't know if you can guide us further on the engagement we've had with lawyers on how to further push for increase of social security among, of course, council, since even the recent implementation of the new law, and yeah, you could shed more light as we wait for our next speaker who will also speak more to this social security topic.
So, thank you, Edith, for your question. I would just like to share my story. I think that would be the easiest way to show the benefit of Social Security. So a few years ago, when I had just finished at the Law Development Center, I was employed somewhere. And at the time, the NSSF Act exempted employers who had less than 5 employees, and I was under that category of an employer. So on a month-to-month basis, we would receive an exemption from NSSF and clearance from NSSF to continue running our business because we were 5 or less employees. Fortunately, I was given an opportunity elsewhere, of which after that I became a member of NSSF. I registered as a member because at the point in time, the employer that I was working for had more than 5 employees and had to comply with NSSF. So I became a member at that point in time, and I have seen the benefit of Social Security. I have seen the growth in my contributions. I have seen the growth in terms of the projectile in the event that I'm to retire at 60 or I'm to retire at 50. I think many of you, if you're a member, you have access to the NSSF Go app. Now, on the NSSF Go app, there is a provision that shows you the projection as to how your growth will be in terms of Social Security and how your contributions will grow at the point that you have retired. And to be honest, I am very satisfied that I'm going to rest peacefully. I'm going to enjoy my retirement. That's of course if I use the money wisely. But let us not shun away from Social Security. Let us not evade. Let us not avoid. Let us not encourage our clients to avoid or evade, because this is a benefit for everybody. You may not realize it now. You may think that the 5% is more like a penalty or a tax, but trust me, in the future, you will see the benefit of it. I have shared my personal story, and of course, I am still growing, but I have seen the benefit of it. I know that at the end of the day, if we also evaluate as advocates, we can speak to our clients, and we can also, as employers, grow this. I know most of us are under partnerships, but I would encourage you to grow this. I would encourage you to enroll your staff under this ambit. But also, regards to this, the NSSF Amendment Act also provides for the voluntary contributions. So you can also become a voluntary member, and you can remit your NSSF accordingly, in accordance to the terms that you deem fit to you and according to how you want it to run. There was also an introduction of a top-up, that on your mandatory contributions you can write and actually top up maybe 2% or 1%, and of which that will also be interest earning. Your money shall be safe. It shall be invested in accordance to the law. The law that helps us govern these investments is first and foremost premised from the UBRA Act and the regulations, which our colleague from UBRA will talk about and elucidate further in regards to that, because they manage the sector and they guide us on how we are supposed to make these investments. On top of that, we have an internal investments policy that also guides us on how these investments are actually made. So I would encourage you, and also advise you that your money is safe. As a member also, I wouldn't encourage you to do something that would, be detrimental to you, but this is for your own good. It's for the good of your staff, and it's for the good of your families, and for your livelihood and well-being in the future.
Thank you, Joanne. Just maybe to remind our participants, in case you want to speak and ask a question, you can unmute. Feel free to unmute and we shall answer directly. Also, just to communicate that in case there are no questions, we shall take just a small break and we shall return with the next speaker shortly. Please do not log off, but also you can post your question and we shall be able to answer it. Thank you so much.
Stuck on you. I got this feeling down deep in my soul, I just can't lose. Guess I'm on my
We're privileged to be joined by our customer experience manager, Mrs. Rebecca Kabugo, who's going to talk to us about personal finance and investment and shed more light on some of the complaints that have been coming through from our customers. Welcome, Mrs. Rebecca Kabugo. So she's going to talk about personal finance and retirement, and then also other issues that will arise as she speaks. Welcome, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Edith. Thanks, everyone. I would like to talk about a topic that's very close to my heart because of the nature of my job. Every single day we have customers who come through the NSSF journey from registering, that's when they're on board with us, and whilst they're with us, and at the point when they're leaving. And just to give a bit of context, about 5 years ago, we realized that most of our customers that come to us and want to get their money at that point when they're mostly frustrated when they don't qualify. When they come to us and want to get their money and they don't qualify, at that point when you're telling them that you'll have to wait 5 more years or 3 more years, or you'll have to wait until you're eligible at a certain point, and they get so frustrated. And it dawned on us that we are not discussing personal finance enough when people at the point of onboarding and at the point when people are still in flight and when they're still working. And just to give you a bit of the statistics, we found that when we pay out this money to our clients, about 98% of them have had only NSSF as their only saving in their lifetime. And then the other statistic, we found out that when we pay out that money again, you'll find that within 2 years, 80% of them do not have anything to show for this money. And so we gave birth to a concept, or we gave birth to an initiative that we dub financial literacy. And at that point, we started saying, you know what, let's go out to our customers at the point when they're onboarding, at the point when they're still with energetic enough to work, to talk about personal finance, to discuss personal finance at the point when, so that at the point when they're retiring, people can enjoy the same lifestyle that they did while they are working. And this is not only unique to people who are in the corporate world, or it's not only unique to people who work in certain industries. It cuts across to everybody, including people in your sector, lawyers. And again, when we went to the statistics, we discovered that the reason why we are poor at personal finance as a country, as a segment, as workers, is because we don't talk about money enough at home. We don't talk about money enough in school. Again, we don't talk about money enough when we are working. And most times when people receive money in bulk, which is the case for NSSF, at that point when you're exiting, people will receive their money in bulk. Most times when people receive money in bulk, and you can, reflect in your own life at that point when you got a salary loan, or when you got a bonus from work, when you got arrears from a gig that you did, we discover that most times when people get money, how do they make that financial decision? They go to a household member, they go to a family relative, they go to a parent, they go to a sister and ask, I have 20 million, I have 5 million, I have 30 million. What do I make of it? What do I do with it? And at that point in time, they don't get financial advisory from somebody who has experience or who has a database journey on being successful in that particular endeavor. So somebody will tell them, you know what, perhaps you'll go to the village and put money in a piggery, or put money in chicken, or buy land. And then 2 years down the road, they have nothing to show for that money because they didn't go to an expert to make this decision. They went to somebody who gave an opinion of what they think or what they feel or what they've had, but they don't have a journey that has, specific attributes like, I put in X amount of money in this period of time, it cost me this amount of money, and I was able to gain this out of it with this sort of activity. And this is what I got. And that is why at the fund, we're extremely passionate about talking about personal finance. But the ultimate goal for us when it comes to retirement is to ask, can you enjoy the same lifestyle you did whilst you were working? If I'm 25 years old, 35 years old, 45 years old, and I'm driving a Vitz, can I ensure that at 65 when I've retired, 10 years past, can I still enjoy that Vitz? If I'm enjoying my favorite food, I'm eating rice and matoke and beans and binyeba, whatever your favorite food is, chicken 3 times a week, can you guarantee that at 65, at 70, at 80, you will still enjoy that lifestyle? What you're eating, where your children are going to school, where you're living, what sort of car you're driving. At a personal level, can you enjoy the same lifestyle you did whilst you were in the workplace? And the challenge to us, or the task that we give to everybody who saves, regardless of how much money you have, is to say that how much money are you getting today on a monthly basis? And it's a question that I would like to give everybody out there. How much money are you getting today on a monthly basis? And when it comes to retirement, can you convert that money into a passive income that equates to the money that you're getting today? And I'd like to break that down. by giving you a story. I know a lady who works in a certain household. She happens to be a nanny, and she gets just 250,000 per month, and she saves 100,000 every month. Today she has about 3 million for the number of years that she has saved. And so one time I asked her, she's called Christine. Christine, how come when Brian, her son is called Brian, how come when Brian is going back to school, you go to school and tell those teachers to wait for you so you can get money to pay for Brian, and yet you have 3 million sitting on your account that you save every single month through your 100,000? And this is what she had to say. She says, Auntie, it's because first and foremost, I understand what it means to be sleeping while I'm earning money. Today, I have to work and have to be present for me to earn this 250,000. The reason I'm saving that 3 million is because one day I would like, she has a plot of land that's about 50 by 40. She says, one day I would like to build rentals, and my dream is to build 10 rooms. And this is somebody who's just thinking about a single room. She gets 250,000 a month. Said, I'd like to build 10 rooms where every room can fetch just up to 50,000. Because Auntie, if that dream comes true, so she has a plot of land that was left to her by her relatives, 50, it's not even the standard, it's 50 by 40 there down in Namuongo, if you know that place near the railway. And her vision, she's done the maths already. If I can come up with single rooms that can fetch 50,000 per month, because that's likened to where she stays today, that means I'll be able to get 500,000 per month. And Auntie, I do not have to work anymore to earn 500,000 per month. Okay? And that's somebody right there who has understood what it means to convert her current daily income into passive income at the time when she's not able to work, or at the time when she doesn't have enough energy that as she has today to fetch 250,000. And that lady challenges me. She challenges me. She's done her math. She knows that she's going to get a brick, somebody who knows how to make bricks on that same land, and she knows that she can convert her current salary through savings, accumulating the savings over time, and then eventually when she builds those rentals, she'll be able to fetch 500,000, which she knows that will excite her because it's much more than what she's getting today. So that question comes to me as Rebecca in NSSF, as a lawyer who's working for a different organization. How much money do you get today? Are you accumulating enough money through NSSF over time? Because again, for you to get to that level of comfort to convert your current salary into passive income, it takes time, and that's what we advocate for at NSSF. It takes time. How much are you saving away today? And when you save that money eventually to get to a point X, and you ask yourself, if that's the principle, and I get interest out of it on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, if I divide that interest that I get into 12 months, am I comfortable enough with the figure that I see? Every time I ask myself that question, I'm not even comfortable with the figure that I see in NSSF. I'm even challenged to say that when does a voluntary, regulations, when do they come out so I can top up my money? Because now I can articulate what I want out of passive income. The same way that Christine, in that household, has been able to articulate what passive income means to her. And for me, that's my ultimate goal of savings for retirement. And we could talk about 1,000 things that you'd like to do with that money. And again, I'd like to go back to some of the conversations and some of the discoveries we've made when we go out to talk about personal finance to people who are still in the workplace, that again, when we did a survey as NSSF to find out, when you get that bulk money, what do you do with it at the end of the day? The top 3 reasons that we found are people are building their dream houses, people are renovating the houses they're staying in currently, people are opening up businesses at 55, and sometimes it's not sustainable. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why they lose it within a period of 2 years, because they have not been they haven't been doing business in their active work life, and now they're turning into business at that point in life. And perhaps business is not a wrong thing. What I'm saying is that perhaps you're not built for business at that point in time because you haven't been exercising business whilst you're still working, and some are buying land, and then some are spending that money on dependents. Even those top 4 reasons, when those top 4 reasons were seen, it's not surprising that within 2 years 80% of our savers are not seeing where this money has gone, and not seeing the success of where this money has gone, and yet that's the point of their retirement. So one of the safest ways that we advocate for people who are built for offices, especially you and I, who will not have the same energy at 60, at 55, is there are instruments out there that you can get money through, and that is passive income, that are low risk, and the return might be low, but it might be the safest way to get that basic income that you need on a monthly basis. But you can only realize that dream if you have been stashing money away consistently over time. And that's the advantage that your NSSF balance gives to you. And I hope that I don't have a PowerPoint with me, I don't have a flip chart to explain all this, but I hope that I'm speaking to somebody. And I hope that as you enjoy your Mercedes Benzes, that's my favorite car, as you enjoy your eating out at Cafe Java's, taking your children to the schools of your dreams, ask yourself this question: am I able to maintain that lifestyle once I'm out of employment? The only way you can answer that question carefully is if you've been saving consistently and you've done the mathematics to convert your energy at this point in time, when you're still strong, when you're still employable, when you're still, following the trends in your career, to convert that into some sort of income. I like to call it passive income beyond 55 years of age. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that. So just to take you back a bit, and I'm speaking to you as the customer experience manager.
Yes, please.
You've encouraged us to save and how to save. So, because this question has been coming up a lot, what about those individuals who don't have national IDs but would like to start saving with NSSF? How can we assist them?
Okay. Today, the way that you register with NSSF, you'll need a national ID because it shows proof of your identity. We're able to know where you stay through your national ID. We're able to know your date of birth. We're able to know the names that are mapped to who you are, and that is why you register through the national ID. And I 9 out of 10 people that come to us every day actually have national IDs because it's a national mandate, and it also eases your ability to access our services beyond registration. However, we have had some complaints from people who are not able for one reason or another to get their national IDs, and we're developing a system where we can use the fingerprints to map somebody's identity to who they are and then get down their personal details. It will be a manual process because today with your national ID you can register from wherever you are. I can even show you how to do that through our platforms, but when we come up with that system where you're going to able to register without the national ID, it will be a bit manual, but it will allow access for people to come through the touch points to onboard onto NSSF. Yes. And once it's ready, we'll go out to the market and let them know. However, we also have a partnership with NERA where we because we have a partnership with NERA, we're able to allocate people. If you have a group of people in the same place, we have a partnership with NERA where we can get somebody in NERA to come to your premise and make sure that national ID access process is easy on your side, and therefore ease the NSSF registration process. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and all the work you're doing for our customers. I have been reliably informed that our next speaker is online. Hello, Rita.
Hello, Doreen. Good morning.
Okay, this is Edith.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're going to speak on a very topic of great importance, which is very paramount for our discussions today. So, our next speaker is Mrs. Rita Nansasi Uwaswa. She's an advocate of the High Court of Uganda with over 15 years of experience in legal practice, legislative drafting, and providing corporate legal services. She also has vast knowledge in boardroom dynamics and corporate governance. She's currently the Director, Legal Services and Board Secretary at the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority, which is UBRA. So as we embark on this topic of exploring the regulatory point of views, I encourage you to engage, ask questions, kindly post them in the chat, and get ready to be enlightened by someone who has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to regulatory affairs. So without further ado, welcome Mrs. Rita, and we eagerly wait to hear your discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Edith, and thank you the rest of the panelists logged on, as well as the participants. Good morning. Kindly give me a minute to share my screen for the presentation. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Oh, yes,
yes,
yes, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning once again. Return on the video. I guess people know who I am, so let me go into the presentation. As introduced, my name is Rita Nansasi Faith Waswa, the Director of Legal Services at UBRA and Secretary to the Board. My presentation will touch UBRA's mandate and the legal framework governing the retirement benefits sector. I'll briefly give you an overview of what UBRA does and what is UBRA, what is our core mandate, I'll take you through the legal framework governing the retirement benefits sector and a brief overview or hindsight of what the sector looks like to date, the different types of schemes that are established in the sector, and briefly take you through what UBRA is doing to ensure that members' benefits are safe and UBRA's strategic priorities.
Recording in progress.
UBRA is the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority that was established by an Act of Parliament. That's the UBRA Act. That was enacted in 2011. And therein, under Section 2, UBRA was set up as a body corporate with perpetual succession and a common seal. It can sue and be sued, it can hold property, and do anything that a body corporate can lawfully do. And the main mandate of UBRA is to regulate and supervise the establishment, management, and operation of retirement benefit schemes in Uganda. We are also responsible for licensing service providers in the sector. These include trustees, administrators, fund managers, and custodians. Trustees are like a board of directors that are responsible for making decisions in the retirement benefit schemes. Then administrators are responsible for keeping records, whereas custodians are financial institutions that are responsible for keeping the money that members are collecting, and fund managers are responsible for giving investment advice on how to effectively invest this money so that a member can earn a return when they are getting their money on retirement. We're also responsible for advising the Minister of Finance on policy-related matters regarding the sector, and we're also responsible for implementing government's policy directives regarding the sector. Briefly about the legal framework that governs the sector, we'll start with the ground norm, which is the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, and therein under Objective 14, that's where the state has to ensure among the fundamental rights that every Ugandan has access to health services, clean and safe water, decent shelter, adequate clothing, food and security, and above all, pension and retirement benefits. So this is the bedrock of the retirement benefits legal framework in the country. We also have the Armed Forces Pensions Act, that's CAP 295, that regulates the retirement benefits of the armed forces. We have the National Social Security Fund Act. I'm sure the previous speakers have already taken you through this. We have the Parliamentary Pensions Act of 2007. We have the Pensions Act, CAP 286. And we also have the UBRA Act and regulations made therein that I've just told you about. This is the act that establishes the authority. And under that act, we have a number of regulations that I'll be telling you about later on that have been enacted to give clear guidance to the sector as they implement the mandate for retirement benefits. So a total of 10 regulations have so far been enacted under the UBRA Act. These include 5 regulations that deal with licensing of retirement benefit schemes and the various service providers I talked about earlier. We also have regulations that govern financial reporting and disclosure in all licensed retirement benefit schemes. We have investment of scheme funds regulations. These guide how the funds collected by the different schemes can be invested, and the approved asset classes and the percentages within which these funds can be invested. We also have regulations that govern the operation and management of the various retirement benefit schemes. We have regulations that govern the merger and winding up of schemes. And recently we have regulations that were issued early last year that provide for the assignment of benefits for mortgages and housing loans. Furthermore, the authority has issued over 7 guidelines that enable the effective implementation of the various regulations. These include guidelines on duties and responsibilities of trustees. We have a member information guideline and booklet. We have a guideline on engaging external auditors. We have a guideline on preparation of annual reports. We have a guideline on fit and proper criteria. This is used when assessing trustees and service providers to be licensed. And we have a whistleblowing guideline. And recently we issued a complaints handling guideline. We have a unit at the authority that handles complaints of all members of various schemes. In case you're having challenges with the scheme that you subscribe to, you can always come to the authority and seek redress and guidance. In the interest of time, I won't go through the list of all the regulations, but this presentation will be shared. I said we have over 10 regulations. They are listed here, and they can also be accessed on the authority website. And recently, these regulations were amended, that is in January this year, to be able to attend to the changing dynamics in the sector. So we encourage all the practitioners, the legal practitioners on call and the service providers to acquaint themselves with the amendments to these regulations to ensure compliance and also to effectively advise your clients on how to care. So UBRA has played a role in advising on the content of this bill, and very soon to be introduced in Parliament. We also contribute on proposals on tax reforms, on taxation of the retirement benefits. We also give recommendations to the Minister when considering an application by the Makerere University Retirement Benefit Scheme when they are trying to be exempted from NSSF, and to date they were able to get that exemption, and they are now recognized as a superannuation scheme. This means that the employees of Makerere University are no longer required to contribute to NSSF because they belong to exempted employment. And we're also leading on the process of developing a blueprint of expanding coverage to the informal sector through introduction of a national micro-pension scheme. For the information at the international level, UBRA has also been active in development of investment regulations and principles for the ESC East African community, and we're also required to comply with these principles, and the investment regulations I talked about earlier are made in accordance with these ESC principles on investment. We are also spearheading the development of the East African Community Retirement Benefits Bill, and also we are part of the International Organization of Pension Supervisors, where we benchmark best practices. And allow me at this point also inform you that next week we shall be hosting the annual Pension Supervisors Conference. I'm sure many of you have seen the adverts on TV and heard them on radio. This is a conference that would be good for you lawyers to attend if you're interested in advancing your knowledge on retirement benefits. Just a brief overview on what the sector looks like. We have mandatory schemes. These include the NSSF, which is a mandatory scheme, where all workers in the private sector are required to contribute. We have the Armed Forces Pension Scheme and the Public Service Pension Scheme. All those are mandatory schemes created under Acts of Parliament. Then in that category still we have the pension scheme. I'm sure the next speaker, Solomon, will speak to you about this, but this is also created under an Act of Parliament, specifically for the members of Parliament and the staff of the Parliamentary Service Commission. Then recently we have the Makerere University Retirement Benefit Scheme that was also added among the occupational mandatory schemes. As I said earlier, the employees of Makerere were exempted from NSSF, and now they contribute all their mandatory contributions to their scheme that is recognized as a superannuation scheme. And also in the sector, we have voluntary schemes that have been licensed by the authority. These attend to individuals that over and above what they contribute in NSSF, they would like to make additional contributions so they can subscribe to these voluntary schemes, and also have a number of occupational schemes that have been set up by many corporate entities or agencies for their employees. Most of these schemes are contributory schemes, apart from the Public Service Pension Scheme that is not contributory, whereby government has to offset through the budget money to pay for pensions. But as I said earlier, we are in the process of amending this and reforming the Public Service Pension Scheme so that it also becomes contributory. The types of schemes that we have in the sector. Schemes are defined differently, many of them based on the benefits that they provide, the mode of payment, and also the sponsorship. So when we go under the category of types of benefits, we have a defined benefit scheme An example of this scheme is the public service pension scheme. In such a scheme, your benefit is defined from the word go, that you're going to get a pension. So you know that in Uganda, we don't contribute. In other countries, the schemes are contributory, but you know that I'll get a prescribed benefit at the point I retire. Then we have a defined contribution scheme. That is the type like NSSF is. Here, your benefit is informed by the contribution you put in, the investment income that is made by the scheme after investing the money. And at the end of the day, this money is paid to you, less the administrative costs. Then we have hybrid schemes. These are a mixture of the defined benefit component and the defined contribution component. And currently in Uganda, I think it's only the Bank of Uganda scheme that has these both components of a DB and a DC. We also have schemes that are defined according to the types of benefits, like a provident fund. NSSF would be in this category. They pay out lump sums. They don't pay pensions. Then we have pension schemes like the public service scheme. These pay out pensions. So it means you are assured of a payment all through the time of your retirement until when you die. Those are pension schemes. Then we have schemes that provide an income drawdown. These are mainly operated by insurance companies. You get your money probably in form of a lump sum, then you give it to them. They keep it for you, keep investing it, and give you a monthly income as per the terms you'll have agreed until a certain point that you've agreed. And we also have a category of occupational schemes. As I said earlier, these are schemes set up by several employers. These are schemes set up by several employers for their employees. Sorry, there is echo coming through. We have individual pension plans. These are mainly set up by insurance companies and other companies that are interested in offering retirement benefits products to individuals that don't necessarily belong to a particular employer. Then we have umbrella schemes. These are schemes that are set up by an entity, but they bring on board several employers or several participating employers to contribute for their employees. This is the structure of a retirement benefit scheme. There's a sponsor or an employer that sets up the scheme. Then there's a board of trustees. This is the governing council in the scheme. They're responsible for making decisions of the scheme. Then we have a layer of service providers. As I said earlier, these include administrators, fund managers, custodians, auditors, actuaries, and even lawyers would fall under the service providers in this category. All these, apart from the lawyers and auditors and actuaries, are required to be licensed by the regulator. Then in that structure, we have the members. These are the people who make their contributions into the scheme. And the structure of an umbrella retirement benefit scheme, it would still have a board of trustees. And then this board of trustees sets up the scheme, which is now combining different participating employers that subscribe into that scheme for the benefit of their employees. And therein, we also have a management committee that represents the different participating employers. All these schemes are governed in accordance with the OBRA Act and regulations made thereunder. Allow me to take you through the slide that brings insight on how OBRA is ensuring that members' benefits are protected. Because it's not enough to tell members, save for retirement, and yet they still have their fears. When we save our money, will it be there? When we clock 50 or 60 and we need our money, shall we find it? So OBRA was set up by government to provide this assurance to the members that when you save, your money is being invested, it's being prudently invested, and you will get it upon retirement. So what has been done? We've required separation of roles. Those different service providers I talked about earlier, the person collecting the money is not the person investing it or keeping it. This clear separation of roles provides for checks and balances so that every service provider is checking another and giving reports to ensure that members' money is safe. There's also strict monitoring of operations of service providers. All these are required to give quarterly reports to the authority. And there's also a requirement to give audited financial statements from all the licensed retirement benefit schemes. These are looked at by the authority, and in case of anything, the trustees are required to comply and informed of any non-compliance issues. And also the authority conducts annual inspections on all these schemes to check and see that the trustees are actually ensuring prudent investment of members' funds, and also requiring that there's strict compliance with the OBRA Act and the regulations and the various trust deeds that are establishing these schemes, or in case of statutory schemes, that the trustees comply with the legal framework under which the scheme is established. I've talked about the prudent investment. Trustees are required to make sure the funds in the scheme are prudently invested so that a member gets a return at the end of the day. And we also encourage diversification such that when this money is collected, it's invested in different asset classes. This helps in that in case one asset class is not performing well, at least the members can recover from another asset class and make sure they are not making a loss. Briefly about the strategic priorities of the authority. We intend to intensify supervision of all licensed entities. We intend to increase coverage to the informal sector. We're implementing the risk-based supervision. We've onboarded a risk-based supervision tool where we can now check all the risks in real time. These licensed entities are required to give returns in real time, and also the regulator can assess these returns and raise any red flags that are identified. We also promote preservation of retirement income, in that we encourage members, when you get your lump sum, you don't have to spend it all. You can actually negotiate with your schemes that you're paid in monthly installments instead of giving you a lump sum and you blow it up and then you start suffering in retirement. We also look at the operational costs of the various schemes and service providers to make sure that members' funds are not eroded. And while I conclude, allow me to inform you that to date we have over 65 licensed schemes. NSSF is one of those schemes we license and regulate. We have the Parliamentary Pension Scheme, we have the Makerere University Pension Scheme, and several other pensions, retirement benefit schemes that are licensed. And I encourage you to visit our website for you to get more information on the licensed schemes. I thank you, and thank you for listening to me. Thank you. Questions are welcome.
Yes, actually there's a question in the chat from Edward Kayemba. I'm seeking more insights on Provident Scheme, and thanks for the presentation. Rita, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can I respond to that, or first take on more questions?
No, that's the only question. I kindly request that you respond to it. Yes.
Funds that normally pay out a lump sum. By the nature of these funds, the way they are constituted and established, they are established in such a way that once you make your contribution, you'll agree that probably at the time I clock 50, let me use the case of NSSF because it's the typical provident fund. Once you clock 55, you can get out your money and they will pay you a lump sum. They are not under any obligation to pay you a pension or to give you monthly payments. If you have contributed and you have over 300 millions, they would give it to you, whether or not you've ever learned to spend 300 millions or you have a plan for it, they would give it to you. And that's where we appreciate the financial literacy programs being taken on by NSSF to make sure that members are trained that when you get this lump sum, how do you spend it? And do you even have to take it all at once? I'm sure they have arrangements where you could take a portion and probably leave a portion, or you can actually put the money with an insurance company to give you an annuity, those monthly payouts. But a provident fund would give you all your billions of money. Once you clock the retirement age, they would give you all your money and you find how best to use it. I hope that explains the type of scheme. Thank you.
Maybe just to also preempt a question, kindly elaborate for us the difference between a contribution scheme and non-contributory scheme.
For that question, a contributory scheme is where from the start, the contribution rates have been determined. Again, allow me to use the case of NSSF, where under the NSSF Act, the law has clearly prescribed that the employer has to contribute 10% of your gross pay, whereas they deduct 5% of your gross pay and remit that money, which is equivalent to 15%, into the scheme. So that is a contributory scheme. The rates are prescribed. By the time you're joining this scheme, you know that this is what is expected of me to remit on a monthly basis into the scheme. And this is what will be invested such that when I reach the point of retirement, I'll get my contribution plus the interest made, less any administrative or operational costs. While a non-contributory scheme, the best example we have to date is the public service pension scheme. It's basically non-contributory, whereby the public servants work, but they don't make monthly contributions into the scheme. Yet government has made a promise to give them a pension upon retirement, and this pension is paid for 15 years into retirement or until when you die. So the challenge is that unless government provides for money in the budget, then this person will reach retirement and there's no money to pay. That's why you've had several scenarios of pensioners saying, we worked, served this government, but they're not paying us our pension. We've worked for months and months, we can't get our pension. Because most times when government is hard pressed and they don't make sufficient budgetary allocations for pension, then it can't be paid because nobody ever contributed for it. Money was not set aside earlier to pay this obligation. So as I said, there is now a a reform to convert the public service pension scheme from a non-contributory scheme into a contributory scheme, such that government will be making a 10% contribution and the civil servants will be making a 5% contribution, similar to what's happening in NSSF, such that when they reach their point of retirement, they'll be paid that contribution. But it's still going to be a defined benefits contributory scheme. That's why they'll still be getting a pension out of their contribution. I hope that clarifies the matter, Edith. Thank you.
Rita, thank you so much. As we are closing, I want to thank Rita. Thank you so much for joining us and presenting. Thank you to all our participants. Thank you to our expert speakers from the CS to Joanne and finally Rita. Thank you for exploring the retirement benefits law. It's been both enlightening and thought-provoking. So as we wrap up, let's take the benefits law, not just a legal framework, but a living, and let's not look at it as an obligation, but an empowerment. So I'll just invite Joanne to give closing remarks to this wonderful session, and thank you all for the active participation.
Hello once again. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for participating in this retirement benefits law CLE training. I also want to thank in a special way all the speakers for the day, for taking the time to do their research, for taking the time to making their presentations, and also enlightening all our members and colleagues in the legal fraternity about this very important topic, saving for a better life, which is what is the key driver of National Social Security Fund. We are expectant and we believe that the key role is for us to have a better life, or to ensure a better life for the members of the fund and for the future of our economy and also for our country. But what is important to note following the theme from this training is that as advocates, we need to embrace Social Security. We need to understand what retirement benefits are about, what different kinds of schemes that are out there, so that as and when customers come to us or clients come to us, we're ably available and we have positioned ourselves as people who are able to give adequate information and guidance and advice to all the different players therein. It should be noted that the sector is highly regulated. Like Rita has put in place, there are a number of laws that are put in place, both from the regulator's perspective. You have UBRA having so numerous regulations that have been put in place. I request you as our members to acquaint yourself with it, keep abreast to it. Also, following the amendments of the NSSF Act, I request you to take time to read through, to consult. We shared our different contacts and how you can get in touch for further guidance that you're able and in a position to also guide your customers. There are other schemes that have been put in place. These schemes include the Parliamentary Pension Scheme, the Public Service Scheme. You can also be advisors in that field as well. So I encourage you, because these are schemes that are established by Acts of Parliament, I would encourage you to keep abreast and to read up on them.
It's also important to know the different role of the key stakeholders that are in this sector, the roles that the regulator has, as Rita has let us know, the roles that NSSF has as statutory scheme that has been established, and the different roles that all players have, and all their governance and how they operate and work. Thank you so much for taking the time, for steering the ship with us. And as we come to a close of the training, I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time, for developing yourself, and also for giving us an opportunity to share the different perspectives from the retirement benefits sector, from the regulator sector, and also as an advocate. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.